Have you ever noticed yourself repeating the same old sorrows? The failures, the losses, the complaints echoing in your mind like a broken record, until you begin to believe they are an unchangeable fate. Each time you tell the story, you not only remind others of the pain, but carve it deeper into your own mind, as if building a prison for your soul. Stoicism reminds us that words are not fleeting echoes, but seeds sown into the soil of the inner life. What you plant, you will harvest. If you continue to nurture complaints, you will see your life bound in chains. But if you pause, embrace silence at the right moment, and choose your words with care, you reclaim the inner power to govern emotion and action. Life is not pre-written. It is rewritten each day by the way we think and the words we choose to speak. And that journey begins here. 1. Discipline in speech is the mirror of inner discipline. Speech is never merely a tool of communication. Every word uttered reflects directly the state of the mind. A person with a restless inner life often lets words spill without direction, while one who has mastered self-control weighs each sentence like a sculptor choosing every stroke of the chisel. Discipline in speech is the mirror reflecting discipline in thought and emotion. When you pause before speaking, you are not only restraining your tone but also training the deeper capacity for self-mastery. The Stoics called this the power of conscious choice, the ability to step away from impulsive reaction and move toward deliberate response. A word spoken in anger is like an arrow released. It cannot return, and it often leaves wounds that do not heal. But a word carefully considered can build a bridge, ease conflict, and preserve dignity. To train discipline in speech is to train the discipline of the soul, for no one truly governs life if still carried away by the sound of their own voice. Marcus Aurelius once wrote that true power lies not in external circumstances, but in mastery of the mind. Words are the channel of that mind. If the mind is shaped by reason and calm, speech carries the strength of clarity and weight. If the mind is indulgent and chaotic, speech reveals weakness and lack of discipline. Thus, learning to remain silent at the right moment, to speak less but with substance, is not a sign of weakness but proof that you command your inner power. When speech is placed under discipline, it becomes a tool of building rather than destruction. Each word can encourage oneself, inspire others, or shape the road ahead. To achieve this requires patience, the willingness to listen before answering, and the filtering of emotion through reason. Then, every word spoken will no longer be meaningless sound, but the mark of maturity and self-command. And as speech is refined, the mind itself becomes steadier, like a fortress that cannot be shaken. 2. Silence, the release valve of stress and anxiety. Silence is not merely the absence of sound, but an inner space that allows reason to breathe. In life, stress and anxiety often arise from hurried reactions when the mind has not yet settled enough to view events with clarity. Here, silence becomes the safety valve, releasing the pressure that builds within, preventing us from being swept away by chaotic emotion. A brief moment of stillness can be the wall that stands between loss of control and the ability to master oneself. The Stoics long reminded us that it is not external circumstances that cause suffering, but how we judge and respond to them. In silence, we suspend judgment, halt the rush of thought, and give room for clarity to speak. This silence is like a still lake, where ripples of anxiety fade and the bottom reason and wisdom becomes visible. In that space, we can discern what requires action and what is only the echo of passing emotion. 8. Discipline. The silence, just as the earth requires rest to revive after harvest, the mind needs pauses to recover from currents of tension. When we stop speaking and stop reacting, we reconnect with breath, with the natural rhythm of body and soul. This quiet, open space where intuition and reason meet, enabling decisions untouched by anxiety. Instead of rushing into the whirlpool of stress, we find inner strength to stand firm and choose wisely. Practicing silence is itself a discipline of the spirit. It demands resistance to the urge for immediate reaction, resistance to the temptation of reckless words. In that struggle, silence becomes a small but lasting victory, proving we are not ruled by circumstance, but are keeping mastery of ourselves. Like a warrior holding his ground in battle, silence allows us to survey the field before striking. And when words are finally spoken, they carry the weight of calm and conviction. Thus, silence is not weakness, but a source of strength. It frees us from invisible pressure, steadies the heartbeat of anxiety, and places in our hands the key to peace. One who learns to use silence holds the power to dissolve tension before it erupts, turning moments of instability into opportunities to train self-control and maturity. 3. Keeping silent before hidden fear. Fear is a natural part of being human, but what makes it more terrifying is how quickly we rush to speak it aloud. Each time we tell someone what we fear, we carve that anxiety deeper into the mind, turning it into a visible force with power over us. Hasty confession feeds fear with energy, allowing it to grow and overshadow reason. In this case, silence is not concealment, but preservation of control so that fear gains no ground. Stoic philosophy reminds us that the true threat does not lie in the event, but in how we think about it. Fear, when not illuminated by reason, is nothing more than shadows magnified within. By staying silent, we grant ourselves space to observe and analyze rather than react in weakness. In that stillness, we can converse with ourselves, examine fear, and trace its roots. Once understood, fear loses its original power, becoming a challenge to be addressed instead of an unavoidable fate. Seneca once wrote that humanity wastes much of life fearing death. His point was not the futility of death itself, but the squandered energy of letting fear dominate every moment of living. If we rush to voice our fears, we give them greater authority. If we remain silent, we remain calm enough to remember that it is we who decide how to face them. Fear ceases to be the master and becomes the opponent through which we train courage. Silence before fear also creates space for preparation. Rather than spreading anxiety through words, we use silence to plan, to equip ourselves with strategy and solutions. Fear then ceases to be a curse and becomes a motive to prepare more wisely, to act more effectively. Silence nourishes inner strength so that when we must finally speak, it is with confidence, not trembling. Therefore, keeping silent before hidden fear is not avoidance, but an act of courage. It preserves our power of choice instead of handing control to worry. And in silence, we can hear the voice within, realizing that fear is only an illusion, one that reason has the strength to dissolve. 4. Revealing goals. Too soon is stealing your own motivation. When a goal first takes shape in the mind, it is like a fragile seedling, weak, untested, and not yet able to withstand storms. Yet people often rush to share it, seeking recognition and praise from others. This may seem harmless, but early praise creates a false sense of satisfaction, tricking the mind into believing the work is already done. At that point, the drive to act weakens because the brain feels rewarded without any real effort. The Stoics always stressed that true reward lies not in praise but in genuine progress. By boasting too soon, we hand over the valuation of our journey to others. Their glances, their comments, whether kind or critical, can stir the will, making us waver instead of focusing on action. That is why Marcus Aurelius advised doing quietly what must be done, for it is action, not declaration, that defines worth. The danger of sharing too soon is not only false satisfaction, but also the burden of expectation. Once public, we place upon ourselves the weight of upholding the image we projected. Energy that should serve the task scatters into maintaining appearances instead. Action gives way to illusion, and the result is delay or abandonment of the goal altogether. Stoicism teaches that progress is silent and patient. Achievement gains meaning only when built step by step, free from dependence on external approval. Keeping goals unspoken is not fear or secrecy, but protection of the flame that must not be extinguished by winds of praise or blame. Silence preserves determination, allowing motivation to be fueled by effort, not illusion. Therefore, instead of seeking joy in attention, seek it in the work itself. In the end, the results will speak for themselves. And when they do, your motivation will rest not on the eyes of others, but on the strength you built through steady action. 5. Choosing carefully whom to share plans with. Each time we express a plan or dream, we give away more than information. We entrust a portion of our belief and hope. Intentions not yet realized are like newly planted seeds, delicate and vulnerable to the soil around them. If sown in barren ground of doubt and criticism, they rarely sprout. But in soil of encouragement and trust, they grow strong and enduring. That is why choosing carefully whom to share with is vital in preserving determination. Stoic philosophy always emphasized the power of proper companionship. Epictetus urged that we keep company with those who lift the spirit rather than pull it down. This applies not only to friendship and relationships, but also to sharing plans. When we share with the right person, we gain not only support, but also strength to reinforce our conviction. But careless sharing leaves us open to unfounded criticism or cold indifference, both of which weaken resolve. A plan nurtured in silence carries focus and persistence. Yet when sharing becomes necessary, it should be only with those who truly wish to see us grow. Not everyone can understand or support our dreams, and not everyone listens with sincerity. Selection, then, is not about closing off, but about wisdom. It is the way we protect our belief from the negative winds that could extinguish the fragile flame of determination. This selection also strengthens inner power. By relying only on the trustworthy, we learn not to depend on the crowd, but to ground ourselves in action. When belief is safeguarded in the right environment, it becomes a firm foundation for the plan. If scattered into barren soil of doubt, it quickly fades. Be cautious in opening your heart about what matters most. To choose the right person to share with is to choose the right soil for planting. Only then can the seed of belief grow into a worthy outcome. 6. Silence, not weakness, but strategy. To many, silence is mistaken for helplessness or lack of confidence. Yet for Stoicism, silence is a trained strength, a sharp strategy that keeps one in control in any situation. In silence, we do not surrender power. Rather, we hold it, waiting for the right moment to use it. Silence creates a precious pause where emotion is restrained and reason can speak. Silence also carries the strength of observation. By resisting haste, we listen more, see more clearly, and understand the whole instead of being lost in fragments. One who knows silence understands that not every question needs an immediate answer, nor every action an instant reaction. In stillness, we gather information, sense the moods and motives of others, and see the essence of situations. This equips us to act later with greater wisdom and certainty. Words, once spoken, cannot be retrieved. Thus, silence ensures that when we do speak, our words have weight. Those who often remain silent at the right time make their speech more valuable, for when they finally speak, others listen with respect. Silence, therefore, is not avoidance but preparation, a way to make every word a precise arrow rather than a fading cloud. Stoicism teaches that controlling speech is part of controlling oneself. Silence is proof that we are not driven by impulse, but wait until the mind is firm enough to respond rightly. It is a conscious choice, showing initiative rather than passivity. Thus, silence becomes a strategic tool, preserving position, creating advantage before decisive action. Silence is not weakness, but the sign of strength refined. It is a strategy that allows us to maintain control, remain calm, and let every word that follows stand as proof of wisdom and resolve. One who knows when to keep silent holds not only an advantage in dialogue, but also mastery over their own life. 7. Rewrite the inner story to transform reality. Human beings often do not live in the world as it is, but in the story they tell themselves. The words we repeat within shape our perception, and from perception flows action. If the inner story is haunted by limits, we will act as if bound, affirming our own helplessness. But if the story holds belief in growth and learning, reality opens a new path, for action follows thought. To rewrite the inner story is the first step to changing how we live and how we face challenge. Stoic philosophy teaches that pain and difficulty arise not from events themselves, but from the judgments we attach to them. When we tell ourselves, "I cannot," it is not merely a phrase, it is a command issued to the mind, forcing it to seek proof of its own defeat. But if we change the words to "I am learning" or "I am improving," the mind begins to search for opportunities to make it true. Words within are not just invisible sounds. They carve neural pathways, shape habits, and gradually become character. Seneca reminded us that people suffer more in imagination than in reality. This means that much of our fear and weakness is born from the story the mind invents. If we keep the old story, we continue to live the destiny it dictates. But if we dare to rewrite it, we shift from passive to active, from victim to creator. When the story changes, the inner world changes, and from there, the outer world transforms. To rewrite the inner story is not self-deception with empty phrases, but the practice of mindfulness in choosing words that strengthen rather than confine. It is the redirection of energy, so that instead of imprisoning ourselves in the past, we open the door to the future. Each new thought is like a fresh line written upon the page, and gradually the book of our life tells a different tale. This is how silence, reason, and disciplined words unite to reshape destiny. 8. The art of listening, the power of presence. In a world where everyone wants to speak, the ability to listen has become a rare art. Stoicism teaches us that silence is not only a tool of self-control, but also the way to open the door of true presence with others. When we listen, it is not only the ears that engage, but the mind, quieting its own noise to fully receive what is being shared. Such listening creates a space of calm, where others feel seen and respected, and where we ourselves cultivate patience and composure. Epictetus reminded us that we have 2 ears but only 1 mouth, so that we may listen twice as much as we speak. This was not a witty remark, but a principle for living. Listening more than speaking forces humility, teaching us that not every moment requires our opinion, and sometimes silent presence holds more power than any argument. One who listens well values understanding over display, and in that silence, connection is formed. The art of listening is also the foundation of understanding. When we truly listen, we hear not only words, but also the pauses between them, the unspoken beneath the surface. This ability allows us to perceive the deeper essence of a matter, rather than reacting only to appearances. And in that process, we cultivate empathy, placing ourselves in another's position and responding not from haste, but from genuine understanding. Listening is also a discipline of the spirit. It demands we silence the urge to interrupt, resist the habit of proving ourselves. Each moment of patience is a victory over impulse, a strengthening of self-command. And when we finally speak after deep listening, our words carry the weight of maturity. Without ornament, understanding itself born of listening becomes the bridge of lasting respect. Thus, listening is not passive, but the art of presence. It is proof of maturity, showing we are strong enough to be silent, steady enough to understand, and mindful enough to speak only at the right time. In learning to listen, we not only build enduring bonds with others, but also cultivate peace and depth within our own soul. 9. Do not keep repeating old stories. One of the most dangerous habits of people is the constant retelling of old stories, especially those tied to failure, loss, or wounds. Each repetition not only recalls the memory, but engraves it deeper, turning the past into chains binding the present. Repeated often, these stories become invisible walls that block the path to new opportunities. That is why Stoicism advises us to remain silent before old wounds, allowing them to close instead of being torn open again by words. Marcus Aurelius urged us not to waste life lamenting what is past, for such sorrow only weighs down the soul. The past cannot be altered, but how we face it today can determine the path ahead. When we cease to retell fragments of pain, we make space for hope, for creativity, for the chance to write a new chapter. Silence here is not denial of the past, but release of the spirit. The choice to no longer imprison ourselves in an old story. Every complaint spoken is like planting a seed of despair in the soul. If nurtured, it grows into thorns of helplessness, choking thought. But if we stop, and instead of repeating pain, plant seeds of faith and responsibility, we change the harvest. Seneca reminded us that much of human suffering does not come from the present, but from reliving what has already passed. By stopping, we reclaim freedom of mind and open the door to the present. What matters is not how we fell, but how we rise. In silence before old tales, we no longer waste energy on regret, but direct it to action and building. The past can teach, but it need not be a chorus repeated endlessly. Each of us can write a new story, but only if we abandon the habit of retelling the old pages. Only in silence, letting the memories settle, can we hear the call of the present and step into the future. 10. Your words teach others how to treat you. Every word we speak not only reflects our inner state, but also sends a message to the world about how others should see and treat us. When our speech is filled with complaint, weakness, or self-belittling, we unintentionally create the image of someone easily dismissed. Repeating such words not only harms self-respect, but also teaches others that we accept being treated without dignity. Conversely, when our words are clear, firm, and weighty, they establish boundaries, affirm value, and compel others to respond with respect. Stoicism emphasizes that human dignity does not depend on external recognition, but on how we choose to present ourselves. Marcus Aurelius advised us to stand firmly on our own ground, for if not, we allow others to decide our worth through our conduct. Words are a direct instrument in this process. When we complain or grumble constantly, others remember the image of helplessness. But when we remain silent before trivial matters and speak only when necessary, with confidence, others learn that we are not to be taken lightly. Each word is a seed sown in the perception others hold of us. That seed grows into attitude, into behavior, and ultimately defines the relationship. If weak and negative words dominate, others will mirror them in how they treat us. But if we keep our words disciplined, calm, and resolute, others will recognize the boundaries, what is permitted and what is not. In this way, we teach the world that we are worthy of respect. To discipline words does not mean to always speak beautifully or harshly, but to speak with intention and purpose. The Stoics advised us to choose words as one chooses tools, few but sharp, simple yet strong. Each word should be able to support rather than destroy, affirm rather than diminish, strengthen rather than erode. In this way, words become both the mirror of inner character and the shield that protects dignity in the eyes of others. Remember, others learn how to treat us from what we allow through our speech. Words, when placed under discipline, are the silent lesson teaching the world that we are worthy of respect and fairness. Once that image is planted, no demand is needed, for others will adjust themselves according to the message carried by our words. 11. Do not share your progress too soon. When change begins, or a new path is taken, it is like a tender shoot breaking through the soil, fragile and unsteady. At that stage, what it needs most is quiet care, not the harsh glare of attention. Sharing early steps too soon is like exposing the seedling to strong winds, leaving little chance for growth. In life, many think that making progress public will fuel motivation, but often the opposite occurs. The gaze of others, their praise or criticism alike, can unsettle resolve. Stoicism teaches that true strength lies in the ability to preserve inner steadiness, free from external sway. When we reveal details of our progress, we surrender a part of that power. Unexpected opinions, hasty judgments, and even well-meaning expectations become burdens, distracting us from the work itself. A single word of praise can breed complacency. A single criticism can drain courage. Both take away the focus and calm essential for perseverance. Silence in progress is not concealment, but protection. It allows us to nurture determination in a private space, untouched by outside voices. In that silence, we gain time to adjust, to correct mistakes, to refine each step without distraction. It is also the way we strengthen independence, proving that our progress is measured by effort itself, not by immediate recognition. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the value of an action is not in how widely it is known, but in whether it is done with the right spirit. By remaining silent, we follow this principle, focusing on quality, not display. Only when the result is solid enough should it be shared, not as a promise, but as evidence. Then, what we present is not an unfinished process, but the strength of a completed outcome worthy of attention. Be patient. Let progress mature in silence. Do not give away privacy and inner strength by exposing it too early. Let stillness guard your steps so each stage becomes its own witness, without embellishment, without justification. When progress is cultivated in silence, the final result will speak louder than any declaration. 12. Each day is a chance to rewrite the story. People often remain haunted by old pages of their life's book, convinced that its content is fixed and unchangeable. But Stoicism reminds us that every present moment is a new pen placed in our hand to rewrite the story. The past may contain mistakes, failures, or regrets, but it has no power over the next lines if we are awake enough to seize the present. Each day, from the moment we open our eyes, is an opportunity to alter direction, to add words of new meaning into our narrative. The language of the inner mind is the tool that shapes this story. If each morning begins with words of failure repeated, we continue writing the same dark chapter. But if we begin instead with affirmations like, "I am learning," "I am improving," we lay the foundation for a new chapter filled with growth and hope. This is not empty self-consolation, but the redirection of thought, awakening the belief that change is always possible. Inner words guide emotion, emotion guides action, and action produces results. Epictetus taught that suffering arises not from events, but from the way we think about them. If we cling to the label failure, we act as if no chance remains. But if we remind ourselves, "I am growing," then even hardship is seen as a necessary lesson along the path. This mindset transforms obstacles into steps and mistakes into material for building a stronger self. Every day opens like a blank page. Yesterday's story is closed, whether joyful or sorrowful. It need not be repeated. What matters is how we choose to write today's page. If we let the past hold the pen, it will rewrite the same errors. But if we grasp the pen ourselves, the next lines can be filled with resilience and self-command. To rewrite the story is not to deny what happened, but to learn to see it differently, turning it into the foundation for a new chapter. Therefore, see each day as a beginning. Use words to plant seeds of resilience and growth in the mind. Let today's story be the proof that the past does not bind you, that the present is always the chance to change, and that the future remains open to those bold enough to rewrite every line with self-mastery and trust in themselves. Looking back over the 12 lessons, I realize the essence does not lie in distant principles, but in choices each of us can make in every moment. All revolve around one central point: mastering words and silence in order to master oneself. For when we let words flow unconsciously, we are led by emotion and circumstance. But when we pause, reflect, and remain silent at the right time, we affirm that we are the ones at the helm. The most important truth I draw is that real strength is not in proving ourselves to others, but in preserving self-control, whether the world around is noisy or still. From silence we find peace, from disciplined words we build respect, and from rewriting the inner story we open a new reality. For me, this is not only philosophy, but a way of living, slower, calmer, more conscious of every word, every thought, every choice in life. If you find value in these reflections, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you will not miss what comes next. Take this as a reminder. Every day is a blank page, and you hold the pen. Do not let the past dictate the content. Write the story you truly want to live, with self-mastery, calmness, and an inner strength unshaken by anything. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.